Hello, everyone. I'm just going to let some more people join us here real quick, and we'll get started here really soon. Okay, guys, thank you for joining us today with MU Extension's Garden Hour. My name is Gwen Funk, and I'm coming to you from Northwest Missouri. And we have quite the lineup today, but I'm hoping that you all are kind of getting your winter clothes out and your hats and your gloves. And I think we've got some weather coming our way, don't we, Zach? I think we're going to start off the hour with Zach. So let's hear about this weather coming our way.
Yes, thank you, Gwen. And you are correct. We are certainly about to get a good taste of winter here. And I'll actually start, though, by looking back at December and how our winter has started so far. And it's actually been pretty mild for all things considered. So, with 2025 in the books here, if we look back at December, our temperatures in Missouri finished about 2.8 degrees above the average there. So at the beginning of December, we were a little snowy and cold and felt like we might be getting into a real winter. But then we really finished the second half of December on the mild side with temperatures there. It was also a very dry month during December. Once again, we had some snow at the beginning of the month, but then very little precipitation at the second half. So we see here that statewide average was only about a half inch of rainfall or melted down snowfall, which is much drier than the December average there. And then if we look at the bar graphs here, we can kind of see the roller coaster of temperatures and precipitation throughout 2025. But adding all that together, if we look at our rainfall, it will go down as a dry year. Nothing record breaking, about the 40th driest on record. But on average, we were 3 inches short of our annual average of about 40 inches of rainfall. Temperatures, kind of a similar story. We were warmer than average, but nothing record breaking there. So 2025 going down as a dry and warm year in the record books there. I did also want to note, I mentioned December was dry with about a half inch of rainfall for the entire state. This map shows just a map of the rainfall for the month of December, and we see that there was even some lower amounts. So northern Missouri did pick up a little bit more rainfall here, but we look at all of these sites, mainly in southern Missouri here, that set a new record for their driest December on record. So some really impressive low totals for places like Joplin with only 0.04 inches of rainfall or melted down snow for December. And even some of the larger sites here, Springfield, Rolla, and Cape Girardeau, all a top three driest December on record there. So pretty impressive for that month there. Now, if we look at January so far this month, it's kind of been a continuation of what we saw, especially in late December here. So if we look at major sites across the state, to date, temperatures are running warmer than average. So anywhere from 2 to 6 degrees above average, even though we've had some cold weather over the past couple days that are starting to bring down that monthly average temperature. So we'll see with the forecast ahead how temperatures actually end up finishing for the month, but probably closer to average with some more cold on the way. And then we look at the map and some of the totals here, but again, the story is a drier month. And so on the right, we look at month to date precipitation, and really only a corridor from Kansas City up to that northwest corner of the state there has seen over an inch of liquid equivalent precipitation. The rest of us, yet another dry month. So we look at some of the totals here, and it looks like unless the forecast changes drastically, we'll finish January as the sixth consecutive drier than average month for the state of Missouri. And so, with this recent dryness, even though it's January and it's hard to kind of see drought and dryness and its effects it can have on vegetation, meteorologically and just looking at rainfall, we are very dry. And so, this is the U.S. Drought Monitor map that was released last Thursday on January 15th. And as has been the case all fall and this winter so far, nearly all of Missouri is at least abnormally dry. A few pockets in northern Missouri are doing okay on moisture, but in the southern half of the state, most areas are in at least moderate drought with some pockets of D2 or severe drought. the farther south you go there as well. So not a big concern when we think about drought in January, but something to think of if we don't recover from this drought getting closer to spring and planting. Now, in the near term forecast, I think the big story in Missouri, or not just Missouri, but really most of the eastern United States, is going to be a powerful winter storm that's coming through here this weekend. And so this is a national message from NOAA kind of summarizing this storm, but we see two maps on the top kind of shows where we're expected to see those snow and ice impacts from Friday through Monday. And we see all of Missouri could see these impacts, but especially the southern half of the state expected to see impacts. And it will be from all snow. So I'll show here in a minute, but there's a lot of cold air with this system. So for once, Missouri's not on this kind of dividing line of freezing rain, rain, and snow. This will be all snow, even for extreme southern parts of the state that don't usually receive significant snowfall events. And so here is the official National Weather Service forecast for now. And I'll add that caveat because please stay tuned to the forecast over the next couple of days, but as the snowfall totals will likely change. But as of right now, north of I-70, maybe 1 to 2 inches of snow, south of I-70 and getting kind of to the lower two tiers of southern two tiers of counties in the state, maybe 2 to 4 inches. But this yellow is anywhere of 6+ inches of snowfall that's in the forecast. And that includes places like the Boot Heel, far southwest Missouri, where we could see these highest totals. So again, keep an eye on the forecast, but for now, significant snowfall expected for extreme southern Missouri. You might be seeing some alerts depending on where you live across the state already. We do have winter storm watches out across the state, some extreme cold watches in northern Missouri. Expect these to continue to expand, and we'll see more of these watches and some of them upgraded to warnings as we get closer to the snowfall that's approaching this weekend. And so the second thing that's going to come with this storm is going to be extreme cold, and that will be everywhere in Missouri. So while southern Missouri may get most of the snow, the extreme temperatures during and after the snow will impact all of the state here. And this will really start tomorrow. And so on the left is tomorrow's high temperature forecast. Looks pretty seasonal for the end of January, nothing too cold. But look at the low temperatures for Thursday night into Friday morning, and we see those temperatures plummet, especially to the north. So some of us getting into the single digits by Friday morning, and that's because we'll have a cold front that's moving through. So with this cold front, I've drawn this blue arrow. Unfortunately, behind that cold front, we're going to have winds pretty much out of the due north, and it's going to be pretty breezy. So Thursday into Friday, maybe gust up to 25 miles per hour. Combine those two things, the wind and the cold temperatures, and look at some of the wind chills we're expecting. So widespread wind chills in the single digits and into the negative teens even across northern Missouri. So a big change here with cold air arriving quickly by Friday morning. And then we see this map shows kind of snow overtaking the state Friday into Saturday, but also these cold temperatures continue here as well. So by Friday night, nearly the entire state will see lows below zero, with those wind chills down as low as -20. And those are pretty widespread across the state, even in the negatives across the Boot Heel, for example. And then after the snow departs, we've just got a couple days where that cold's going to sit around. These are the same maps, but now showing those low temperatures and wind chills for Saturday. Still very bitter and dangerous cold. A little bit better on Sunday, but again, this will be 4 consecutive nights where we'll see those minimum wind chills below zero for nearly all of Missouri. So lots of extreme cold coming. The one positive is that these are the high temperatures for next Monday and Tuesday, and we do see a slow warm up. So Monday, still a pretty chilly day, but may see a few spots get to freezing, but temperatures actually in the 30s by Thursday or Tuesday, excuse me. So about 4 days of this extreme cold, and then we should start to moderate next week. So looking ahead behind all of this cold, what does the 8 to 14 day outlook show as we get into February? So for temperatures, we see most of the cold air kind of moving off to the east, but the forecast is still favoring colder than average temperatures for Missouri. So maybe not as extreme as this round coming this weekend, but maybe that cold air will stick around into week two. And then we see the precipitation forecast, and it's dry. And essentially, after this snowfall moves through this weekend, we don't have much precipitation there in the forecast. So, again, something to think about as we get into February. We could really use some significant snow or rain before we get into the spring. And then February, the monthly temperature outlook, equal chances for Missouri. So not a very strong forecast here. We'll have to see as we get farther into the month, how long this cold air that's shown here to the north sticks around this part of the U.S. and if it can swing the forecast here for February. And then the precipitation forecast for February is a little bit stronger as it points to some chances for wetter than average conditions, but not very high probabilities and only for the eastern half of the state. So hopefully this verifies where we could use that rain or snow, but we could definitely use a little bit of more of that to the western part of the state as well. So that's all I've got for this month, but hopefully everybody can stay warm and enjoy the winter weather.
Thank you, Zach. I appreciate all that information about this upcoming weather. I know my daughter, she's wanting the no school in January type snow up here, but I don't think we're going to get it here, but maybe maybe further south they will. So anyway, we're going to move on here. Our next presentation will be from Dr. Tamara Rial, and she is going to be talking to us about house plants and their pests. So Tamara, if you are ready, you can take it away.
Thank you. Let me just pull up my slides. Are you able to hear me well? Are you able to hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Great. Okay. I will just give a quick trigger warning. If you really can't handle looking at insects, you might want to just look away from the screen and just listen or come back in 10 minutes. So, because we are talking about the insects and other critters you might find inside your house. And there's a reason why we can get kind of that ick factor, because like anytime, well, it's a protective mechanism. But it's really important for us to understand what's harmless, what's helpful, and what is really not a problem. So let's talk about our friends and foes and why we might not to actually need to freak out. So first of all, we need to understand why insects or other critters might find their way into our house. Just like us, they want food, water, shelter, protection from the elements, or they might accidentally find their way into our place. So when we can keep those things in mind, that's going to help us with integrated pest management. So you guys have heard us talk about integrated pest management in the garden. It's the same in your house. So we need to be able to identify what it is that we're looking at. We need to understand its biology. We need to also be able to fix those conditions that are allowing them to be there, or if we understand the biology, we can possibly eliminate that to help with the control. And then if needed, there are treatments that we can use. When we use integrated pest management, we reduce pesticide use, yet we improve long-term control. And we also protect our beneficial species. So let's talk about some of the good things that you might find in or around your house, but might not recognize that they're good, especially if you have any phobias of anything with more than 4 legs. So we're going to talk about house centipedes and spiders. So keeping in mind that these are actually predators of other household pests. So if you have these in your house, that's because they're eating the other things that you don't want. For the most part, they are harmless to people. They don't damage your house, and they typically avoid human contact. So specifically the house centipede. This is one that I hear a lot about. They look alarming. They move really fast. They kind of look and feel as if they come from some sort of a sci-fi movie. But biologically, they're actually one of our best indoor pest control agents because they're predators. They feed on cockroaches, ants, flies, spiders, silverfish, even bed bugs. They don't damage your house. They're not building nests. They're not reproducing in large indoor populations. You might have a few, but usually not a ton. In Missouri, they're pretty common. Like I said, I hear a lot about these when people call me, sometimes in a panic. Um, but they're often common in basements, in older homes, and from an IPM perspective, if you see one occasionally, it usually means there at least were other insects present. For spiders, there's the common ones that find our way into our homes: wolf spiders, cellar spiders, even jumping spiders. These are pretty common, but they're not usually a problem in people's homes other than being afraid of them. So these spiders are generally shy. They tend to avoid people. They also are feeding on flies, mosquitoes, moths, and other insects. We do have brown recluses and black widows, but they're typically rare indoors. But also, they're not aggressive. They are severely over-identified. Most brown recluses that people send me pictures of are actually wolf spiders. From a IPM perspective, spiders are indicators of other insects. If you remove spiders but don't address the insects that they're feeding on, you're actually just treating a symptom and not the cause. So I would recommend relocating them, sealing entry points, reducing any of the prey insects that they're feeding on. Those are better long-term strategies than spraying for them. Okay, what are the critters that we need to be aware of and take action? So just as a broad category, these are species that are going to damage our structures. They're going to bite or sting us. They can spread pathogens. They can trigger asthma or allergies, or else they're reproducing aggressively indoors. So examples are roaches, bed bugs, and termites. So let's look at these kind of quickly so that you can identify them and what you need to do for each one of them. So the typical roaches that are found in Missouri homes are German and brown-banded cockroaches. Those are ones that can live and breed inside of our homes. Oriental and American cockroaches can be found outside as well as inside. And then we also have wood cockroaches that are very common in Missouri. But if you find them in your home, it's an accident. They don't want to be there either. They will not reproduce in your home. But the German and brown banded can be pretty common. German cockroaches are the ones that are typically found in kitchens, in cupboards. They kind of need a warm and humid area to be in, compared to the brown banded, which don't need warm and humid areas. And so you can actually find them anywhere in your home. If you find one or two, it might not be a problem, but if you're finding them commonly, and especially if you're finding them during the day, that can be an indicator that you have a bigger problem. So it could mean that you have a breeding population, and so you're going to want to treat. So first you need to identify. German cockroaches are small and tan. They have two dark stripes. And the others have very distinctive characteristics. This one right here is actually an American cockroach. What you need to be doing is sanitation. You need to be cleaning your kitchen, making sure the dishes are out of the sink. You need to remove crumbs and grease, seal your food, reduce moisture, reduce humidity in your home. You're also going to want to practice exclusion. So seal your cracks, repair any leaks. That's going to also help keep any insects from coming into your home. You might need to do some targeted control. This is going to be baits, not sprays. And they're going to be placed where the roaches are hiding. You also will be using them consistently. Blanket spraying usually doesn't work long term, and it can actually make infestations work. And if you're having trouble controlling them, you might consider bringing in professionals because they're going to have access to pesticides that the regular person does not have. With cockroaches, we can deal with resistance issues with some pesticides. Bed bugs, not fun. And this is a time when people are traveling, or just after the holidays, about 3 months after the holidays, we start to see more infestation with bed bugs because it can take about 3 months for people to realize that they brought them home. Bed bugs are hitchhikers. They're not an indicator of a messy home, but if you have a messy home, it's going to make it harder to get rid of them. It's important to know they don't vector diseases, but they are very difficult to eradicate. Usually you're going to need professional help. For IPM, prevention is best. So what I do when I travel, I do inspections. I inspect the bed. Before I go into a hotel, all of my luggage goes into the bathtub, and I actually inspect the hotel room. I inspect all the drawers, the behind the TV. I'm looking everywhere because I don't want to bring them home with me. As soon as I get home, my clothes go into the washer and dryer. My suitcase actually goes into a heater that heats the suitcase up to a temperature that they can't survive. And then I'm able to be okay. If you don't have that heater, that's okay. You can put your suitcase in a bag and maybe keep it in the garage. Never leave it in your room. If you do find that you have bed bugs, again, you might consider getting professional help. It is expensive, but professional help can actually eliminate the problem before it gets to be a bigger problem and can possibly save you money in the long run. You're not going to want to be throwing away the furniture and throwing your clothes away without taking care of the problem, because they're great at hiding. And unless you've contained them and then eliminated them, the problem is going to persist. Termites, most homes in Missouri that are 30 years or older have had at least one termite infestation. That's just to let you know if you get them, like, join the club. Termites are something you usually need professional help with. It's usually not a do-it-yourself solvable problem. But some things that you can do: make sure that you don't have soil touching wood on your house. Don't put wood next to your house. If you have firewood, keep that on the other side of the yard. Also, do inspections around your house every year and look for mud tunnels that go from the soil up to your house, or up the side of your house, about the size of a pencil. That's an indicator that you could have termites. So every spring, definitely look for them. All of us have termites in our yard. It's just a matter of the opportunity for them to actually get into your house. Pantry pests, Indian meal moths. I get a lot of calls about these. This is actually an Indian meal moth right here. If you see these in your pantry, you have Indian meal moth. And again, this is something that are typically brought into the house because they're common in other places. You can just bring home some flour or some crackers that maybe were on the shelf too long at the grocery store, and now you have pantry moths. So if you find that you have them, you're going to want to empty your pantry completely. You need to discard anything that's already infested, put it in a bag, seal the bag, take it immediately outside. Vacuum the shelves and cracks before you wash them. That way you can make sure you get all the crumbs. And then make sure you store all of your dry goods in sealed, airtight containers. You should not be spraying insecticides in your pantry. It's unnecessary. It's not healthy. Definitely not recommended. Often, brown marmorated stink bugs, Asiatic, multicolored lady beetles, box elder bugs, cluster flies find their way into our home in the fall as well. Prevention, again, having screens that don't have holes in them, sealing cracks, adding weather stripping are all ways to help keep them from coming into your house. Once they find their way into your house, you can vacuum them up. Now, that might create a smell. Stink bugs are called that for a reason. And also, these multicolored lady beetles can also have a scent gland that, or a defensive smell that isn't great. You can just know that none of these are going to be breeding in your house, and they'll try and find their way out in the spring too. So it's not necessarily a problem. And if you're afraid that you're going to be vacuuming up our native ladybugs, just look at this part right here, this pronotum. So it looks like it has an M, and you'll notice all of these have this M-like coloration on this part of their body. Those are the invasive ones. Our native lady beetles do not have that. Just gonna quickly on this springtails, because I get calls about these when we have a lot of rain, which we haven't had a lot the last year, but hopefully we'll get more rain. These are springtails. They're itty bitty, teeny tiny, and when you have these massive groups with thousands of them, it looks like dust that jumps. They're not fleas, they're springtails, they're not dangerous, and outside, just leave them alone. If you find them inside, it usually means that you have a leak or some sort of moisture problem. If you take care of the moisture problem, they'll disappear. So just vacuum them up, decrease the humidity, and increase ventilation, and you'll be fine. So what you watch for household pests, look for repeated sightings. If you have roaches that you're seeing in the day, any damage like this is damage that I'd be concerned about. Termites. And if you have moisture problems, then you likely will have insect problems. So try and take care of those things, and then you'll be able to sleep better at night. A few more insects that if you find in your home, don't freak out about. Ants. They always find a way in, and they're usually not a problem. Usually they'll go away, or you can put baits out, and they'll go away eventually. Unless they're carpenter ants, then you need professional help with that. Beetles sometimes find their way into our home, but they're not a problem. Silverfish usually mean there's a moisture problem, and those centipedes will get them for you. Again, integrated pest management. Make sure that you're identifying what the problem is, understand its biology, and then we can fix the condition so that they will either go away or we'll be able to treat them and then they won't come back. And then make sure that you're only using pesticides if it is actually necessary. And by using IPM, you're going to have better long-term control. We're going to protect our beneficial species, and you're going to protect your health. So just really fast, don't panic. Don't spray first. Identify what you have. Fix any problems like moisture, especially any entry points, and then use research-based resources to help with any problems that you have. I did create a little guide, and I'll drop this link in the chat for you, or you can scan that QR code. But just some very quick tips about what you need to be concerned about, why you need to be concerned about, and what you don't need to be concerned about. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I'll be around for a while. I can answer them. I know we need to move on to other programs, but thanks so much.
Thank you, Tamara. That was wonderful. I heard on a radio show a long time ago, and it probably was not a research-based thing, but they said that we should thank the ants if we see them in our house, because that's telling us we have a moisture problem and we need to take care of it so the wood doesn't degrade in our house. It was just kind of a different take on that. So I thought that's kind of interesting.
It's so true. When we see these things, they're an indicator usually of something else that's going on. So yes, thank the insects and
Right.
the centipedes and the spiders.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, we are going to move on. Some of you might be thinking about getting your garden started and thinking about the seeds and the new varieties and things that you want to plant. So Donna is going to talk to us today about starting seeds. So if she is ready, you can have the screen.
All right, let me get this pulled up. Okay, all right, can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, I'm going to talk about selecting seeds for seed starting and a little bit about seed starting. So I always like to tell people success starts with doing your homework and being prepared. I consider myself a pretty avid seed starter, but I'm not a good seed starter if I don't look up the dates and I don't look up how to germinate something and, or what the specifics are for each variety. So it's very good to always do your homework. And there will be a link that gets dropped into the chat for the guide that MU has on the different varieties that you can start and all the particulars on how to start those seeds. I am a failure once in a while, but a lot of it's because I don't do that homework. And so I can't emphasize that enough. See if I can get this going. Okay, there we go. So in doing your research, it's going to help you figure out, one, what do you want to grow? How many days will it take for it to germinate? How many days do you have to grow it before you can even transplant it into the garden? Do you need to cover those seeds? Or do you need to expose them to light? Or how deep do those seeds need to go? And don't forget that each seed that you have also can germinate at a different temperature. Some of them want to be cool and some of them want to be heated up. And when I say heated up, maybe up to 80 degrees. And that's when we would use bottom heat. So this is the reason why I always say do your research, because then you can answer these questions for every seed variety that you choose to grow. with doing the research, there is a lot of information on the seed packets that you get. Now, on some of the online sources, some of those seed packets don't have much information. That's where you go back to that website, or you go to your extension guide and take a look. But if you go to some of the box stores and you pick up some of those seed packets, that's when a lot of those will actually have a lot of cultural information that is available. You know, how deep do you plant them? How many days do you expect, before germination occurs? So on and so forth. But be aware that the seed packet can have a lot of information. There are other companies such as Johnny Select Seed that a lot of the information culturally is found on the website and in the plant catalogs. So I always tell people, hold on to those catalogs and bookmark those seed sites, because you never know exactly where that information is going to come from. But once again, we also have a great MU guide that will also help give that information. I really believe in sourcing good quality seeds, and they should be, the seed should be viable. They should be alive. And so I always try to encourage people to look at the germination rates. They should have a percentage even on a lot of these seed packets that will tell you, okay, if I plant 100 of them, if it's 86%, I know to expect 86 seeds are going to germinate. And that just indicates also a little bit the freshness. When you go to get seeds, always remember that there is an expiration date or a package date on the back of the seed packet. And so that gives you an idea of the freshness and the viability. So if you find a package that it's 4 years old, you might as well decide that it's probably not going to germinate well. But if something's only a year old, or you go to the store and you buy a brand new packet, it should have this year's date on it. So definitely read that packet and pay attention to those seed companies in the catalogs. Also, there is differences in types of seeds. When you start looking through the catalogs and online, realize that, in my opinion, I'm always going to shoot for the raw or the organic type seeds. That means there's nothing been done to them. They're just raw. On the left, we have treated or we have pelleted. Treated means that they have been treated with an insecticide or a fungicide, or they've been coated for some reason with some additive. Whereas pelleted, it's a hard clay coating that has been applied to the seeds for easier handling. Now, these are good if you're going to use up that whole seed stock in 1 year. But if you have a habit of holding seeds from year to year to year, like I do, I'm still starting tomato seeds that are 8 years old. Pelleted is not a wise idea. And that's why I always migrate to buying raw or untreated seed, because I tend to keep them longer. But if I'm going to use them all up in 1 year or 2 years, then I don't mind the pelleted. What happens is, if you hold those seeds past a year, the pelleted seeds, the clay becomes really, really hard, and they dry out. And so it takes a lot of water to break through that clay coating for that seed to be able to germinate. Most of my experience is those poor little seeds will break their necks getting out of that old seed if it's clay coated. And so my preference is untreated seed. Everybody has a different preference, and it's okay if you've had good luck and that's your preference to do the pelleted. If you are a beginner on seed starting, I would recommend some of the easier to germinate seeds. And this is a slide with all of those. Things like zinnias and marigolds and bachelor buttons and celosia and tomatoes and basil and lemon balm. All those type seeds come up very quickly. And I find that I can have a little bit more of room for error on these. And that's what makes them great. The other part of it is they come up fairly quickly. I don't have to wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks. They're going to be coming up very quickly. And so that's what I find, if you're a beginner, that's what you want. You want to know, you want to have that satisfaction that you're doing it right and you're doing it quickly. And then once you get used to seed starting, then you can jump to the more complicated things. Peppers are going to take 2 to 3 weeks. There are some plants that take 16 weeks to go from germination to out in the garden. And so there's a very broad spectrum to seed starting. And so I would encourage everybody to start with some of the easier ones. Once again, if you're a beginner, I always like to encourage people to stick with the time-tested varieties. And that way, for sure that there's a lot of research out there. You know what to expect. And they're proven over time. Avoid flashy and very ornate varieties, because a lot of those, sometimes they struggle. I grew, I think it was last year, I grew some with very ornate variegation or venation on the leaves, and the plants just did not perform well. They were being bred for the colorful leaves, and probably forsaked the fact that it wasn't a strong grower. And so I would definitely watch that. Try to pick things with short germination times. I already mentioned this. You want to pick something with shorter crop times. And so no 16-week crop. You want a 6-week crop or an 8-week crop. And so how do you know how long it's going to take? That's where these guides come in handy. That's where the catalogs come in handy. And it will say in there, it will take 6 weeks or 8 weeks from germination. And so definitely pay attention to that. And I also encourage disease-resistant varieties that are not prone to damping off. So instead of using just a regular basil, sweet basil, I would choose a Genovese sweet basil. And that way you have a little bit more protection on the disease. And so just pay attention to what some of these catalogs tell you. Don't get ahead of yourself, make a plan. I always try to tell people, buy your seeds early, buy your supplies early. If you wait until March or April, a lot of these companies are already backlogged and it's going to take longer to get your supplies to you. So definitely start early. But on seeding, don't start too early, but don't start too late. And this is where it goes back to getting that calendar and making a list of what you want to grow, making a list of how many weeks it's going to take. Make that plan, because, for example, those people that are starting tomatoes in January, the plants are going to be way too big by the time you want to put them in the ground in May. And so I always try to encourage, get that calendar. So it says that tomatoes need 8 weeks. So you establish your May 1st planting date and you count back on your calendar 8 weeks. And you might throw in an extra week for germination time. That will put you into about a March, the second or third week of March as starting time for your tomatoes. If you have a 12-week crop, you would count back 12 weeks and add another week onto it. And then your starting date might be the second week of February. And so that's why it's important to make a plan. That's why it's important to get you a calendar and try to figure out when you need to be starting these things. And I do believe everybody has a different timeline. I do have gardeners that start their tomato seeds in January, but they have a process, because they're going to transplant their tomato 2 or 3 times. They're probably going to plant them in a big mineral tub and move them in and out as the weather fluctuates in April. And so everybody's got a different plan. So don't be scared to play around with the dates and try to figure out what's going to suit you the best. Okay. Choose your supplies early. There's lots and lots of supplies out there, lots and lots of good tips and tricks and new gadgets that you can try. These are the basics that I want you to keep in mind. One is a good potting mix is very vital to seed starting. You can try the seed starting mixes. To me, they stay too wet, and I'm a poor manager when it comes to seed starting mixes. So I choose a good potting mix with no fertilizer in it. And because these little seedlings, they don't need that push yet. They don't need a push on fertilizer until they get to true leaf stage. And so a good, just general potting mix is great for seed starting. Always choose containers with holes. It doesn't matter what kind of containers you have as long as it's holes. that has holes. You can use yogurt containers. You can use styrofoam cups, although I don't promote those. I really stick with a lot of what the commercials growers stick with, because I can get several uses as long as I'm sanitizing them between uses. They tend to suit my purpose more, but everybody's different. Everybody has different plans. Another thing I really like is leak-proof pans. So whether it's a flat underneath everything that doesn't have a hole, or whether it's a one of those boot trays that you can buy from a lot of different places, there's lots of different options there. The big concrete mixing pans, lots of different options for a leak-proof. The other one is lights. I think good quality lights is important for seed starting, whether you're using new fluorescent bulbs or whether you invest the money to go with some of the newer technologies with LEDs. It's a whole class in itself. So if you want more information about lights, please reach out, and any of us in the horticulture realm can help you with that. But good lights are essential to seed starting. If you have a good south or west window, yes, that will work. But I really feel that plants, if they're going to be short, sturdy, stocky, very healthy, you need good quality lights that go beyond a southern or a western window. Some plants like to be kept warm, and that's where that bottom heat, so the mats or the cables, really come in handy. And that's where it goes back to research. Find out what your plants are going to want. So lettuce and any of your cole crops like your broccoli, your cabbage, cauliflower, they're not going to want that bottom heat. And actually, bottom heat can retard the growth of a seedling. But if you're doing tomatoes and peppers and, some of the warmer season flowers, they might need that bottom heat. So do your research and find out which needs what. Label everything. That's one of my biggest lessons learned over the years. My favorite anymore is masking tape and pencils. And it's simple, it's cheap, it's effective. Pencil doesn't wash off with water, and masking tape can last through many, many water cycles or watering cycles. So that's my preference, but I also use a lot of the pre-made plastic 4-inch labels. You can buy about you can buy about 1,000 of them online for about $20, give or take. And they work. I typically wash mine at the end of season, reuse, and I'll mark out the old, the old label, and I'll write new. So I get multiple uses out of them. You can use popsicle sticks, but always remember that they do collect a lot of moisture. They will actually start to deteriorate. And sometimes the print, when you go to print on them, it leaks into the wood and it's hard to read. And so I just keep that in mind. I also like China markers and UV resistant markers. Sharpies are a no-no when it comes to putting them in greenhouses and UV light. They fade. And if you use a Sharpie or some type of permanent marker, they don't hold up real well. And so that's why they've started really touting the benefits of using a UV resistant marker. And you can find them online at a lot of the garden places, and they do hold up under the sunlight. And so I recommend those also. When you go to labeling, just remember variety and date of sowing. And, it's not just about putting the word tomato on that label. It's about putting the variety too. And I always I have a lot of master gardeners that like to help me. And I always remind them, if there's 3 sets of dianthus and they're all 3 different, you need to make sure to put that variety down on that label. That makes a difference, because then you don't get to the garden and go, what was this again? Okay, I can't remember which one this is. So definitely make sure your labeling is correct and it suits your purpose. I also go a step further, and I write in a journal or a notebook, and I make a list of all the seeds that I have started, because I never know when the print is going to fade or my information is going to get lost. And so I always try to have a double check system. Now I know I covered a lot here, but it's putting it all together that makes it work. So just a brief overview. Just make sure to start early, start small, start simple. Don't invest too much money. Oh yes, we can invest a lot of money on all these little trinkets here and there, But sometimes the simplest things to do is just get in an open flat, fill it full of soil, sow you some seeds, and get going. And make sure to sanitize everything. A lot of disease issues that we find in seedlings come from the fact that we haven't sanitized well enough. So a 10% bleach solution, and you wash these pots out or wash the flats out, will help you keep some of those diseases at bay. And I'm open to any questions anytime anybody wants to reach out to me. And I just hope everybody is happy doing the seed starting this spring. Okay, back to you.
Thank you, Donna. I always start out with really good intentions, and then I fall apart in the labeling. I think, oh, I'll remember it. And nope, I don't.
It's always a lesson learned every year.
every year. Thank you for that.
Hey, Donna, you had a question about recommendations for potting mix without fertilizers. Do you want to expand on that?
Going to be hard to find. I know a lot of the companies now are putting a slow release fertilizer in. What you can do is reach out to your local greenhouse or a nursery and see if they have any that I mean, there is like a sunshine mix I can think of. There's a pro mix I can think of. There are ones out there. They may be more catered to the commercial industry, but that doesn't mean you can't get your hands on them. And I will tell you, a lot of the seed starting mixes, they do have vermiculite in them, but they don't have the slow release fertilizers in them. So you might start there. My preference is getting some of the bigger bales and the bigger bags, because I do a massive amount of seed starting, but that's what I've resorted to, is some of the commercial mixes that don't have it.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we have about 15 minutes left, and we have Dr. Trinklein on here to talk about Valentine's Day. That's just a few weeks away, I guess. So what can we look for in our plants that might help us celebrate? Dr. Trinklein, if you're ready, there you go.
I am ready. Can you hear me? And can you see my slides?
It's perfect. Yes, hear you and see it. It's wonderful.
Well, I'm not used to perfection, but I'll do my best. Well, after hearing Zack's forecast, Valentine's Day couldn't come too soon as far as I'm concerned. But on the other hand, it is one of the few things that makes February interesting. So the quintessential gift for Valentine's Day is a dozen red roses. If the giver has been in the proverbial doghouse in the eyes of the recipient, then it might be 24 red roses. But whatever the case, cut flowers, and rose being the number one, is probably still going to predominate Valentine's Day gift giving. Did some research, and last year 250 million roses were sold for Valentine's Day. And all indications suggest that the same will hold true this year. Well, problem is that after a week or 10 days, that beautiful dozen of red roses look something like this. And of course, they need to be tossed out. And with that, there were pleasant memories, but nothing that you can, if you will, take and grow and will last for maybe years, so that the recipient is reminded of the thoughtfulness of the gift giver day after day, year after year. So at the risk of offending florists who might be listening, of course, they sell plants too. This year, you might consider giving, instead of cut flowers, a plant. And what better type of plant to give than one that has a heart-shaped leaf? Valentine's Day, if there's one thing that's consistent about all advertising, frankly, all Valentines and so forth, it's the shape of a heart. Interesting. If you research the background or history of how this symmetrical shape became synonymous with a heart, you'll run into a lot of questions that, frankly, nobody knows. But be that as it may, this symmetrical shape has, from frankly, antiquity, stand for the heart. It doesn't look anything like a human heart, but nonetheless, heart shape. One theory is that it is the same shape contained by the seed of a now extinct, this is a fossilized seed, of Silphinium. And Silphinium was a plant that was essentially harvested to death. It was thought to be an aphrodisiac because it had that perfect heart shape in the seed. Be that as it may, the heart shape continues. So, plants with heart-shaped leaves. Again, suggestive of something special for Valentine's Day or a special feeling, but a plant that will survive and bring many days, months, years of happiness to the giver. So let's go through a few of them. We'll start with one of the most common. This is heartleaf philodendron. Used to be Philodendron cordatum. Of course, a cardiologist is a heart doctor, but it's been changed, the name, but you still see the heart-shaped leaf. Very, very good low-light plant. Can be grown on a totem, and by that we simply mean something in the center of the pot that we use to allow the philodendron to vine, or some plants take a little bit more care and we have to attach with pins or so forth. Actually, they're staples, the bind to the osmunda fiber or other kind of wood support. I have seen those who might be familiar with the ag building on campus at the University of Missouri knows that it looks like a mausoleum. It has no windows. And I have seen, bless their hearts, secretaries and so forth who have these growing on their desks. Now, mind you, they only get light Monday through Friday from like 7 until, I don't know when the janitors leave, but whatever the case might be, they're still growing. It gives you an idea of how durable this particular species is. Can be used in a hanging basket, a totem, as we said, here in a 4-inch pot. Just very, very versatile. Somewhat of a look-alike is golden pothos. It belongs to a different genus, but it too has the heart-shaped leaves. If we graduate to the pothos, we're getting some color along with the green leaf. There is a marble pothos which has white variegation. This is the classic golden. It too is a very forgiving plant in low light. You will find that in lower light, the variegation often disappears. The plant needs chlorophyll to survive, so it dispenses with the variegation. But a very tough plant, use similar to heartleaf philodendron, totems, pots, perhaps a young dish garden, and so forth. Are you aware that there is a heartleaf Hoya? This is Hoya kerrii. You probably are familiar with wax plant Hoya. That's Hoya carnosa, which is a very attractive, nice house plant, but it doesn't have heart-shaped leaves. At Valentine's Day, you'll often find heart-shaped Hoya sold as simply a rooted leaf. You get the idea. You're buying a heart, giving a heart to someone special, and from that rooted leaf will spring the Hoya. I should say there also is a variegated form of heartleaf Hoya, which is quite attractive. Pearls, Sergia, it takes that, I think, of a heart-shaped leaf. You can see there, especially in the lower left, there are some perfect heart shapes. It too has the variegation in the leaves. It's very pendulous. This is something you would only grow in the likes of a hanging basket. It's a medium. I should have said that about the Hoya as well. A medium light-loving plant won't get along very well with the kind of light that heartleaf philodendron as well as pothos can put up with. But it too is very delicate and perfect heart-shaped leaves. There is actually a heartleaf fern, believe it or not. They somewhat become elongated hearts when the fronds age, but you can see in the lower center, the new fronds as they come out are a perfect heart shape. Well, what about blooming plants, you ask? In my mind, there is no better gift for Valentine's Day than a red cyclamen. Red, of course, is the traditional color of Valentine's Day. And the leaves are not only heart-shaped, they're also mottled, or you might call that variegated. This is a plant that likes cool temperatures, so if you get one for Valentine's Day, you'll want to keep it in a cool part of the home. It's a plant that can be rebloomed year after year. Cyclamen form reproductive structures called corms at their base. And those corms can be harvested, stored, and then, as we would with the likes of an amaryllis bulb, bring them out of dormancy and rebloom them. As a benefit, you find some of the newer cultivars of cyclamen are nicely scented or fragranced. So this is just an ideal Valentine's Day plant that will go for years. The colors red and green, very vivid, and with that, a nice scent. Anthurium is another example of a plant that has a heart-like leaf, but the inflorescence, the red part is called the shield, and some circles the spathe, perfect heart shape. Well, you're saying, well, I don't have a greenhouse. We all know that the Anthurium androitum is rather large, and it does take up quite a bit of light, and maybe we don't have that ability or that particular exposure at our disposal. This is Anthurium Lady Jane. And again, notice the heart-shaped leaf. Notice the heart-shaped shield of the inflorescence. Very, very nice little house. It blooms prolifically. It does need a little bit more light than the philodendron or the pothos, but on the other hand, it is certainly a very cheerful plant that will give many years of enjoyment. The care is not terribly difficult as long as we, like Donna said, practice sanitation, do scouting for insects or so forth, use a very porous, well-drained, peat-light potting mix, and these plants will thrive for many, many years. So I don't know which wire service it was. They're all now nearly defunct because of online wire, but there was a wire service whose moniker was Say It With Flowers. Again, at the risk of offending any florists in the audience, I'm going to change that to say It With Plants for this Valentine's Day, or throw in a few flowers too if you want. But nonetheless, a plant is something that will take care of properly, give years of enjoyment to the recipient. That's all I have, Gwen. Turn it back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Trinklein. That was great. I love seeing all those different plants and just seeing the variation on all the leaves. It's the variety in the plant world is wonderful. So there's always ways you can be creative. Okay, there is one a comment in the chat, Dr. Trinklein, you might want to address about the heart-shaped Hoya. Said that they got a leaf. Yeah, I don't know if you want to tip it says it's a zombie leaf, but it's not necessarily taking root. or the leaves are rooting but not growing into another plant. I didn't know if you wanted to address that maybe a little bit.
It could be the environmental conditions. And again, a Hoya needs more light than the likes of a pothos or the hardleaf philodendron. I would advise to try to give it a bit more light and give it a bit more time. But in time, there should be an apical meristem that's going to come out from where the roots have taken root and will establish a new plant. So a bit more light and a bit more time.
Sounds good. We always have to test our patience sometimes with these things. So, all right, folks, we'd like to thank you for joining us today. Our next garden hour will be in February, the third Wednesday, February 18th from noon to 1. You can register at the site that you see there on your screen. And that way you'll receive an email to remind you and get the Zoom link and everything for it. Also, if you want to save the chat, there are some wonderful links in there. You just go to the little three dots that are up here at the top, click on that, and you'll see a drop bar that says save chat, and it will save it into a Zoom file on your computer. I know it's a little bit different with different software, but you should be able to find it that way. And then also, I just wanted to bring your attention to our horticulture map for the state. We have horticulture specialists that are stationed all around the state. We all have interest in a lot of different topics dealing with horticulture. If one of us can't find the answer, then we'll reach out to someone who does. So we ask for you to do that. We are here to support you. So with that, I say again, thank you for joining us today. And I hope that you stay warm and safe over this weekend, especially those of you in the South Missouri quadrant, or in that part of the state anyway. And yeah, have a great day. We'll see you next month. Thanks.